Welcome to preparing Verdi's Requiem tonight, presented by Harold Rosenbaum. Most of you have been with us before, so you know the drill, but for those of you that have not, we're so excited to have you. There will be a live Q&A at the end of the session, as always, open to anyone. So if you have a question, raise your hand and Harold can call on you to answer. Since there are so many of us, we have put everyone on mute to avoid any extra feedback or background noise. To unmute yourself and communicate during the meeting, just hold down your space bar and that will unmute yourself while you are holding it down. Releasing it will immediately put you back on mute so you don't have to worry about it. If this doesn't work, there is the little microphone button at the bottom left-hand corner, and you can use that to mute and unmute yourself. We'll be sending over more information about the organization, as well as Harold and his amazing career, to the chat box. This includes a donation link. Harold is giving all of these sessions for free to the public, and therefore any donations are greatly accepted and appreciated. These donations go to the Canticorum Virtuosi Inc., which provides funding for both of Harold's New York-based choirs, and these donations are tax deductible. So also you can use the chat box that will send this information in for any technological assistance that you may need throughout the session. Lastly, we'll be recording this video and archiving it, and we'll send that link to you to review this video and the material that we work on today at your own leisure. We'll be sending that link tomorrow, and it will also have the link to our future meetings. And we hope that you enjoy this wonderful lecture. And Harold, go ahead and take it over.
Okay, can you all hear me? Yes, okay. So I'm just curious, Karina, we have at least 3 others who signed up today, but they're not here. I guess there's nothing we can do about it, right? I'll just start.
Yeah, go ahead. I have a feeling some people are coming in and out because I see their names on my participant list, but they're not on the screen, so they might have just popped out for a second. But I would definitely get going.
Okay, I'm getting going here. So this, how many of you have either sung or conducted or heard? Well, you've probably all heard the Verdi Requiem, right? Has anybody not heard it? Okay, and how many of you have sung in it? 3 of you. How many have conducted it? Okay, so yeah, I've conducted it twice, and the first time was, I forget if it was 2004 or 2007, but I had 7 choirs and I combined them all. I rehearsed them all separately and I combined them after only 1 rehearsal, which in Carnegie Hall. And I think Carnegie Hall does not allow you to rehearse the day before, like other halls like Tully or every other hall I've ever rented. You get like 3 hours for, included in your the price that you pay to use the hall, except Carnegie doesn't allow it except the day of. And then I also conducted it in Italy, and that was really something. So where do I begin? This is considered to be his Verdi's best opera. Obviously it's not an opera, but it's so dramatic. And again, I'm not going to get through the whole piece, obviously, but I will start from the beginning. And I will say that for decades, I've taught my conducting students to do the minimal prep gestures at the beginning of, movements or pieces. And well, that's, okay, I'm jumping ahead to the DS era. So remind me when we get to the DS era, talk about prep gestures. So forget that for a moment. Okay. You want to remain true to the composer's intentions as much as you can. The whole first movement is extraordinarily soft and sublime. Sotto voce. Now the first thing to be, oh, there it is. So you can all see the score as we move along. I'm looking at my own conducting orchestral score, but I have the measure numbers in it. And so this does also, just scroll down a bit to where the chorus comes in. Now, right away, if I'm hearing a performance of this and I'm hearing Requiem, Requiem, I'm going to say to myself, gee, that could have been improved. Requiem. I think that's how I did it. I came away. You start really softly, but then you even come away. Again, it's the same old, same old. You sing it the way you speak it. Now that's not always true, especially in this piece at times. But come away nicely. Okay. Um, the Let me just mute myself. I have to.
Unmute yourself, Harold.
Mute. Okay. So let's go on. Let's go on. It says. Then it says as softly as possible. Requiem aeternam. Oh, now hold on a second. You all notice that there is a big curved line in my score. Now this is G. Sherma, which is a very reputable company, obviously. My score is Dover, which I believe is a reprint. Here it is. It's a reprint. It's an unabridged republication of the work as, oh, it's Peters, right. Well, Peters is probably even more reputable in a sense than Shermer's, even though I kind of work for Shermer's, I'll say that. But what the heck is this big curved line there? It's not in the Dover edition, it's not in Peters. And in choral music, a curved line, you just don't see that. I mean, it doesn't have any meaning, except the only composers, in other words, if there were one, you all know this, if there were one syllable and more than one note, more than one different notes, then you would have a curved line connecting as many notes as there are with one syllable. So this makes no sense to me. Somebody might say, well, it means smooth or no breath, but the default is smooth anyway. And of course you wouldn't take a breath. So anyway, it means nothing. I'm not even sure why it's there. So let's go on. I'll ignore the piano reduction. It's the orchestra, the piano reduction of the orchestra most of the time, but there is a crescendo. Go back up. I'm sorry. Go right back up to the first page there, page 2, Karina. You'll notice that there's a big crescendo and decrescendo in the orchestra. And keep going up so I can see the voice parts, please. Oh yeah. So, yeah. So you'll notice the chorus and orchestra are doing quite different things at that point. The orchestra is crescendoing and the chorus is not. Okay, anyway, let's go on. Then you have soli. Let's talk about the soloists for a minute. Go on. 4 sopranos. Oh, 4 sopranos. Okay. Well, if you're doing this with a professional choir, you'll probably want 4 sopranos. If you're doing this with a really, really good volunteer choir, 4 sopranos. If you're doing this with a college choir or a choir where the voice is not as trained, you might want more than 4 sopranos. It's all about the balance, Let's talk for a moment about the numbers of singers compared to the number of players in general. I have this formula in my head that seems to work. If you have a professional choir, and who has a professional choir? I mean, there's so few professional choirs in this country. I'm fortunate to have one of the 40 or so. Um, in Berlin alone, there are four professional choirs, and each one is 100 members. It's unbelievable. Um, but with a professional choir, basically, um, 1.25 singers per player. Like if you have 100 players, maybe you want 125 singers, something like that. But with a very, very good amateur choir, 1.5 to one player. With a very average amateur choir, you really should have probably twice as many singers as players. Now, twice I did, 3 times, I believe, with the Bart Festival. I was asked to supply 120 professional singers from Mahler's Eighth, Schoenberg's Gurrelieder. I think that was it, just those 2 times. And the balance wasn't quite right when the brass was at full force. But anyway, how many people for the? I had in Carnegie Hall, I had 240 singers, and I had an orchestra of 65, and that was good. That was really good because you need a lot of power coming from the orchestra, from the chorus here. Let's go on. He has, without that, Jake, hold on a second. I'm sorry. Without the printed decrescendo, oh, you know something? I'm going to say this, and this is a lesson learned. This particular score, which we're using, which is on IMSLP, because it has measure markings, although they're handwritten, is not the same as my score, the Dover. I have an accent on do, an accent with no decrescendo. Do, do, so do, no. Now, that does not mean, just because there's an accent just on D-O, that first note, it does not mean that you shouldn't sing na softer. You know what I mean? Like do, no. I'm at the last moment, you can come away. This has no particular accent and a coming away. Fine. But be careful. As a conductor, you have to be careful that you don't allow the singers to go in that fourth statement, domine, that you don't let them go domine, because an amateur choir will tend to sing NE louder than MI because that's a little higher. Okay, let me just go on. Go on, scroll down, please. The question throughout this piece so often is how long should those oh, look, Karina, I am putting my cursor, and it's your, how is it that my cursor is being seen? Is that, you know what I mean?
That'll only be on your screen.
Oh, it's just on my screen. Huh, okay. You have to be really careful. Okay, let me just continue with my thought. The final notes before rests. Sometimes they should be held fully as printed, and sometimes you don't want that. There's that curved line. Here, I think you want full value, but later on, I'll show you where you might not want that. Let's go down. Yeah. Again, you have to be really careful. 3 Ps does not mean not expressive. You don't want luce. That's like robotic. How about luce? I literally hear 5 levels of stress, all within pianissimo and 3 Ps. Because if you speak this, you can all see me, right? So if you have a meter, like a volume meter, I'll exaggerate. I'll do everything a little louder. But here's the level of loudness. Luce ad eis. I have 5 levels of stress. And it would be a mistake to treat 3 Ps like luce ad eis with no expression. That's an interesting thing. Now let's go on. Let's go down. Now, you have a different section with a completely different mood. and it says a little faster. That's fine. Uh, the question now is, as I was saying before, do final notes, are final notes held uh, according to what's written, like the soprano, right under the word poco or più? Should that be an absolute eighth note, or should it be staccato? Luce ad eis. You know, it's up to the conductor. I'm not going to say one way or other what it should be, unless you really press me on it. But that's one of the things you have to consider. You have to also consider where to breathe. For example, now we're in the bass part. I'm going to look at my score for a moment and let me see if, yeah, I have the same accents. So let's assume those accents are Verdi's. This reminds me a little bit of a piece that Milton Babbitt handed me that he wrote in 1938. And he handed it to me like, I don't know, 15 years ago. And he said, my boy, please publish this for me. Why he chose me, I don't know. But what I had to do was edit it. And he had a lot of notes in this piece. It's called Mass for, let me think, Music for the Mass, or Mass for, I forget. It's without a credo. It's the Mass text, and it's brilliant, and it's tonal, and it's very chromatic, but it's tonal. Milton Babbitt tonal. Think of that. But he had a lot of weak syllables, an octave on an octave higher accented, a weak syllable accented on a very high pitch. I scratched them all out, and then I went back to him. I dared not approach. I dared not submit anything to Schirmer's to publish it, which they eventually did, without checking with him. And he said, "Oh yeah, that's fine. What you did was fine. Okay." But I was able to go to him. I'm not able to go to Verdi, so I really want to be clear. I don't see the score anymore. I see people. Hello, Maria Teresa, and hello, Renee, and can you get the music back to me, Karina? I don't see it anymore. Does everybody see the music, or just yourselves?
Sorry, Harold. My computer. I needed to get back at it. Just give me a second.
Okay. Okay. Let me just say this. What I was going to say was, you want to be true to the composer's intentions, obviously. He wants a real accent. For whatever reason. Okay, fine. So you do that. By the way, you notice he didn't put breath marks. I mean, he could have written hymnus, Hymnus, in the bass part. He could have written the F natural as a quarter note to make it easier. Or certainly in the last measure on the page, the bass part, Z, Z, on. I mean, it seems to me there should be a breath there. So he's not putting breaths in, so you have to do it yourself. Okay, but my main, besides the point I'm making, is if we get to it, I'll try to remember to get to it and skip over things. In the very last movement, there are a lot of inconsistencies. He has accents and other things in one part, and then in another part, two measures later, where the music and the words are exactly the same, he doesn't have them. It's just darn inconsistent. And you really have to make up for that as the conductor. You have to make decisions. Okay, let's go on. Let's skip to where the soloist first comes. This is an a cappella section. This is one of the few a cappella sections in the piece. In fact, it might be the only one, I think. And therefore, if they flat and the orchestra comes in, keep going all the way to measure 56. Scroll down to 56. Keep going. Those squiggly lines, those handwritten lines, those are just by the person that submitted this to IMSLP. Right before this, right before the page before this. Yeah. You know, the thing is, the question is, even though there's no retard, do you want to put one in? right before that whole note, before tempo one. Again, something to think about. It's sort of akin to Baroque music where you have forte going to piano, and modern scholarship tells us that there are gradations. You don't, it's not necessarily forte going right to piano, but you can certainly do a diminuendo to piano. So yeah, and then also how much time should there be a pausa before tempo one? There has to be. Nobody in his right mind or her right mind would go, um, you know, I'll sing the soprano part. No, the strings and the orchestra can't possibly come in right away. So there has to be a pausa. Well, knowing that, and you are free to take other liberties, it seems to me, and especially if you're doing this in a church with an echo residence, Um, Carnegie Hall doesn't have that much reverb, but has great acoustics. And then I did this in Todi, Italy, in a cathedral, and you really have to wait a good 3 or 4 seconds for the sound to disappear. Okay, let's go on. I want to get right to the first entrance of the soloist, which is measure 77, 78. Keep going. Keep going, keep going. Right before this. Yeah, go up one. Go up, go back up. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So um I'll right there. Right there. No, don't go. Go back up so I can see the soprano. So luce, luce, sopranos. Luce, basses, luce, alta, luce, alta. You notice I did a rubato before the tenor entrance. That whole note, look at the tenor entrance. Go back, go down now, please. Yeah, I mean, it is the 19th century, so you're free to do these rubatos. I was surprised to learn that Verdi was born in 1813, I believe it is, very early, before Brahms. I was thinking he was afterwards, but anyway. The next interpretive thing you should think about possibly doing is can you scroll down just a little bit so I can still see the tenor solo? No, you can't really do that. Okay, the tenor goes Kyrie. I felt when I conducted this that I should take a delay before the next entrance. Each of the four soloists comes in with a delay before it. It just seems to, and again, I don't listen to recordings or live performances of any piece I decide to conduct, but I did hear the Verdi Requiem many times before I conducted it. And I'd like to think, even if I never heard recordings or performances, I still would have delayed each entrance. Let's talk about soloists for a minute, because I've worked quite a bit with, really great soloists from management and great soloists who didn't have management. You know, you have to, you can't just let them do whatever they want to do, even if they've had a major career and they've worked, in quartets. The tendency I have found is for soloists in quartets, for example, or even as, many of them singing just one line, is not to come away to the weak syllable which ends a phrase. So if they're all, let's say for a moment, later on you will see this, but let's say let's just assume for a moment they're all singing together, Kyrie ele, on different notes, they're ending up, and then they sing son, that last note, very loudly. it just doesn't make sense to me. But I see that quite often, and you have to speak up. They expect, they expect to be shaped. I mean, nobody would dare contradict Leonard Bernstein or von Karajan or any of the great conductors if they said they wanted something. So, I've been challenged. I mean, when I started conducting, I was in my early 20s, and my goodness, I was challenged. You hold your own. That's it. You just hold your own. But but here's a big but. Excuse me, that's not supposed to be anything but with one T. A big but is uh, that you have to be collegial. Now, what I mean is you don't be like dictatorial. You don't just tell them what you want all the time. You have to say, you have to caress them and say, you know, um, why don't we come away a little bit at the end? Is that good? You have to. There's a fine line here, because if you ask their opinion, and you have this wise guy or somebody full of himself or full of herself, and they'll challenge you. But the thing is, I've witnessed, uh, I witnessed Bob Spano. I worked with him 8 times when he was conductor of the Brooklyn Philharmonic, and now he's in Atlanta, but he's conducted virtually every major orchestra in the world. And he was so collegial, nobody would dare disagree with him. Um, he would ask them, but everybody knew he wasn't really asking, but they wanted to please him. So you have to be careful. And by the way, again, not necessarily this piece, but every time I work with soloists on their arias or duets in opera, or I haven't conducted much opera, but oratorios or cantatas, I always ask them what tempo they like before I give them my tempo. And chances are their tempo will be very close to what you envision. And with soloists, every soloist has a capability where they sound best. For example, if it's a Baroque piece and it's allegro and there are a lot of 16th notes, and a soloist has a little vibrato or a little too much vibrato maybe for Bach, they simply can't do 16th notes well if it's too fast. So I like to do that. I always do that. What tempo would you like? And then if I don't like it, I suggest a different tempo, and that's really a nice way to approach things, I think. So here we are, the first solo, and every single one. Let's go down. Keep going down. All right. Yeah. Before every entrance, I hear a rubato. Can we go to the second movement now? The Dies Irae. This is perhaps the most scary day of wrath in the literature. I heard somebody had a heart attack and listening to this in Tanglewood once. Whether he would have had it if he were home eating dinner, I don't know, but he had a heart attack during the opening. It's really scary. So in Carnegie Hall, the first movement ended beautifully, very softly, and I was about to begin the second movement. I raised my arm, and a cell phone went off in the orchestra on stage. And the person whose cell phone went off decided not to realize it was hers on purpose. I don't know, maybe she just didn't realize. So after like 8 or 9 rings, she stopped it. But at that point, I had already put my arm down. Anyway, this is the spot. This is the movement where I, hold on a second. Okay, in this, forget cut time. Because in my score, it's just a C, that it's not cut time. So in the orchestral parts, it was in 4/4. And I decided, I really thought about this, for 6 months. I thought about the opening of this movement. I wanted it to be really together. Oh, by the way, it wasn't the St. Luke's. I hired the Brooklyn Philharmonic Orchestra to do this with me in Carnegie Hall. And in Europe, it was an Eastern European orchestra. Anyway, I thought about this. 4/4, you can certainly get away with this. 3/4, boom. 3/4, boom. But I decided not to. By the way, it's flutes, oboes, clarinets, bassoon, it's horns, it's everybody. So it's easier for string players to come in if you give 2 beats than it is for those who have to take breaths. But I decided for the first and only time in my life to give 4 prep gestures. I just gave 4 prep gestures. I gave a whole measure. And I told them, of course, I told them I was going to do that in rehearsal. And I went like this. And I got the most amazing togetherness. It was just shocking. But notice I did not go like this. I didn't give these forte or fortissimo gestures. I went, did I have a baton? I think I might have had a baton for this. I don't know, doesn't matter. I just enlarged the gestures as I went along. I started small. And that's my basic default, whether you give two beats prep or 4. The first one, nobody's ever going to give 4, or even 3. It's either 1 prep gesture or 2, except for this one time. And if you're going 3, 4, 3, 4, 3 should be smaller than 4 so that you don't spook them into coming early. Okay, let's go to the to measure 8 or 9. Measure 9. This is the spot I was talking about, one of the very, very many spots, like measure 21, where you have to say to yourself, okay, it's an 8th note. Do you really want the chorus to sing a full 8th note? So they have to think. Why should they have to think about the exact length of an 8th note here? So let me sing the tenor part, the second tenor part. I guess the word is ire. So one and off, or just tell them to make it staccato. And the answer to me, it was obvious. You tell them to make it staccato, because otherwise it's crazy. And it's not just because otherwise it's crazy, but it just fits in with the mood and so many other places. Now, for example, 1 second. Well, measure 11 and 12. Well, the very opening of the movement. Let's go back to the very opening. Let's go back to the very opening of this movement. I mean, first of all, one of my, keep going, that's it, thank you. You know, I'm not as well versed in orchestral playing as I am in choral singing. So I always meet with the concert master. We go over bowings, things like that. Again, I'm not a musicologist. I don't know every single answer, but it seems to me that these first 2 measures are not only accented, but staccato. Dun, dun, dun. They're not da, da, right? So let me just turn my, Karina's saying there's a little delay on her side, probably the internet. Okay. So if I say you're fired, you won't hear it for 4 seconds? Or what? No, I'm kidding. Okay, now let's go on. So, I mean, you probably all know this as boom. It's just a big boom, like the bass drum. So that just tells me, that obviously not every quarter note is a quarter note, obviously. So let me see. Are there any questions so far?
I did have a question on the first movement. I don't know if you want me to come back to it later or do it now.
No, now it's fine.
When the soloists are coming in, the tempo is a little faster, I think. Is there some way that you try and prepare that new tempo, or people just have to get with it?
They have to get with it. Let me just get to it. Hold on a second. Here it is. Well, first of all, okay, Karina, if you can go to the first movement, measure 78. So those of you who have been watching me weekly, I talk about gravity. I haven't talked about it much, but when I give private lessons and workshops, I talk about gravity, how important it is when you conduct, to give it a sense of purpose to the beat. So, see, it's not just the tenor. It's not primarily the tenor who needs to know your tempo, your new tempo right away, but it's the strings, because they have eighth notes. So you have to be really careful. I'll do it. I'll conduct the last two measures before the tempo change. Let me just say something. It says animando un poco. Animando doesn't mean a tempo change. It just means becoming agitated. By the way, if that's not where the tempo change is. The tempo change is back when the a cappella section begins. But let's say for a moment there is a tempo change here. Let's just say it's a little faster for the sake of the question. Here are the last two measures. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Dun, 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 dun. You're lingering before the downbeat, but then you have to establish the tempo somehow on the downbeat. It's hard to describe, but I'll just show you again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Gravity. See, 3. I'm not going 3, 4, 1. Like I'm not doing legato. See, legato is all the same beat or the same speed. Watch this. No, 3, 4, 1, 2. You might give a little bounce to the downbeat, even if it were a legato. Instead of going 3, 4, 1, 2, with that curved rebound, you might give a bounce. 1. You know what I mean? So that there's an angled rebound, so that it's a little clearer for them to see the tempo. But you can see them do tempo. I'm gonna change tempi. I'm gonna do it faster or slower. One measure before the tempo change. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Well, that's easy. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, you can't prepare for that. You're right. You just have to be very clear on the downbeat. Okay. Look at the second movement, measure 21. Okay, so now you have solvet. Time shall perish like a bubble on the day of wrath. Do you really want quarter notes, full value? Solvet seclum. Or do you want solvet seclum? See, that's something you just have to ask yourself. And if the orchestra is doubling, like if the first violins, for example, are doubling sopranos, and you decide to make it staccato, you have to write that in the orchestral part before you hand it out. Because they have to match. The orchestra have an accent there. It seems to me they're going to cut that short. I mean, those of you who are string players, dum 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 dum. They're changing bows. They're changing the bow direction. It's very fast. It's accented, obviously. It's shorter. Okay. Are there any other questions? I mean, this is relatively easy to conduct in a sense, because this whole section. Oh, let's look at measure 42 in this movement. 42. So, stentando, I believe it is, it means sluggish. it doesn't have it there, but in my score in measure 44, it says stentando un poco a tempo. Oh no, stentando, okay, wait. In my score in measure 45, 45. Oh, there it is. It's there too. So it means heavy and sluggish. It's like another way of saying retard, right? So how do you conduct this? It's very simple. Measure 43. Dun, 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 dun. It's not tempo, so the orchestra knows what tempo it is without even having to look at you because they've been playing it for 43 measures before the retard there. This is a hard one for basses in amateur choruses to do because they're on a roll. I mean, scroll up again, please. Just one notch. You know, they're going, the basses rule here. Dies irae, dies illa, sol vel, scroll down. In fa dum da da dum bum 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 da. They gotta watch. You gotta tell them to look up, memorize it. They can't stare down at that moment. Okay. Now, right after that, we'll go down one. I don't feel like they have to cut these notes short. The quarter notes before the rest. No, go up, right there. 46. D, C. Oh, no, D. I'm confused because I see crossings out. I'll sing the bass part. D, S, E, D. Yeah, I don't see that has to be short. If you do something too much, it becomes mannered. And it's even though it's fortissimo, it's a little, believe it or not, gentler than the preceding section because there are no accents. Okay. You know, obviously, it's already 7:44. I want to jump to the last movement for a moment. So I don't know what scores you guys have on your laps there, but oh yeah, this is another. Wait, I'm sorry. Let me get to the last movement myself. Oh yeah, this is the other a cappella section. Movement 7. Is it 7? I'm trying to find where it begins. Ah, here it is. Liberame, 158. By the way, you know that sublime moment where the soprano goes Requiem up to a high B flat pianissimo? My soprano was ill, didn't tell me, and went Requiem. She stayed in the same note. I could have killed her. All right, but I'm a pacifist, so I didn't. Anyway, you know, she what can I say? Okay, let's look at the opening. Right. The thing is, how do you bring the chorus in? Oh, see, in my edition, it's all without bar lines. Yeah. We'll go down a little bit. It says senza misura. So what does the conductor do? She can start by herself. She can do this by herself for a while, right? But again, you want to control the pace. I was talking about this last week in between movements. So I just tell her away from me. I bring her in, but then I stop conducting. And she goes, Liberame Domine te morte eterna. But then you have to bring the orchestra in. So how do you do that? I'm going to show you. So, Liberame Domine te morte eterna, indi ei la treme. That's all you have to do. You give the fourth beat, and I tell her in advance that I'm going to, even though it's written, there are 3 written eighth notes before the orchestra comes in, E, La, Tre. I just give a quarter's worth. This is interesting. The tempo is 72. That's my tempo that I choose. quarter equals 72 when the orchestra comes in. And you have to listen to the soloist because she might do it a little slower than I just did it. She might do it a little faster. So I determined in rehearsal that when she got to Ela, even though there are 3 eighth notes left in the measure, I gave a quarter note in 72, and it worked out for the future. It worked out for the next measure. So I'm going to sing it again. She goes, Liberame Domine morte eterna. She takes a breath. And that's 72. Yeah. That's interesting. You have to figure these things out. Chorus, something completely different now. Let's look at the choral part. Then I think we have to take some questions and maybe stop soon, but I can go on a little longer. Okay, what the heck do you do here? So here are those long curved lines again, which have no place here, because you all know curved lines with dots on top of each note means portato, which is sort of half legato and half staccato, which doesn't apply here. So these lines don't mean anything to me. But how to conduct this? There are no measures here. It says senza misura, no measures, without measures. And then it says a tempo on the bottom. And that's where that's where it wants a tempo. Well, I chose, and I would still do it this way, to do it like this. On Menda, you start, you give the 4/4 pattern. But I just did, it's chanting, and you rehearse it. But if you conduct the strong syllables, liberame domine de morte eterna, that's all you need to do with no pattern. So to bring them in, you give the 4th beat as if you're conducting the pattern, but then you go. Okay, that's what I want to say about that. I want to just go back. We don't have to look at it if it's too much trouble, but the Sanctus movement, maybe we can just look at that for a moment. The opening of the Sanctus. In my score, it's page 124. Singers so often ask, well, while she's getting it, I'll say, singers very often ask, do commas in the text mean you breathe? And I told you this last week. I say most of the time, but since it's only most of the time, then take it on a case-by-case basis. You're getting close. Just keep going back to the beginning. So right after this introductory passage, here it is. So these are the four trumpets. 4, 1. Oh, here. Okay, wait. Let me just stop. Here's where you have to give, obviously, true prep gestures. Just scroll down a little bit so you can see the bass clef of the piano part. Excellent. That's just the trumpets. And they come in on the end of 1, and it's allegro. You can't go 1, no, 4, 1. And that should be enough. 4, 1. Sanctus. I can't imagine that should be a full quarter note. I just can't. But now let's scroll ahead to where the double fugue comes in. I think it's double fugue. Okay, so this is what I wanted to say. You'll notice there's a comma after each sanctus. So I often refer to this when students say, should you breathe after commas? How do you breathe after each comma? Sanctus, sanctus, sanctus. That's crazy. Especially because the word ends with an S and begins with an S. So that just proves my point. And yeah, you gotta put the breath marks in because he doesn't put any in the score. For example, wouldn't you breathe after Sabaoth? Sanctus, 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 Dominus Deus Sabaoth. Obviously, and most conductors don't bother. You have to give all the cues. How do you give all the cues when there are so many entrances? And it's in two, which makes it even more difficult, like this. Song to song to boom, dun, 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 to altos, dun, to altos, dun. You just keep shifting and cueing as many as you can. Concentrate on the singers. The orchestra can do fine without you having to cue them when they're doubling the singers. And the very end of the piece. Well, again, in this last movement, I don't know if I can find it, but there are a lot of inconsistencies. On your own, you can see, well, I was talking before. Yeah. So let's look at the next to the last page, which is measure 40, what is it, 409, 410? Yeah. By the way, when I come each week and do these, everything I talk about, I've conducted, but I make a point not to look at these scores, even if I haven't seen them in 10 years or even thought of this piece in 10 years, because I want to approach it freshly. I don't want to have a script. So that's why I sort of sound like I'm winging it, because I am, but I remember things. So.
I'm sorry, Harold, did you want to go to the second to last page of the entire piece or that movement?
Oh yeah, the entire piece.
Okay, one second.
Right. Just right before that, the next to the last page. It's actually measure 409. I'm not sure what. Oh, you don't have measures here. Okay, wait. Are you getting close to the, okay. No, way after that. Just go to the your last page for a moment. Your last page, the last 6 measures of the piece. Okay, stop. Go to the top so I can see the soprano part. You'll notice the orchestra has a half note. And the chorus has an 8th rest before May. I don't have that in my score, but in either case, you should stop conducting. Obviously, when the chorus has that fermata, the soloist sings on her own, but you have to cut off the orchestra. Off, absolutely. Then she's singing, and then again you have to conduct starting on ila tre, man. Oh, by the way, I have notes in my scores to bring in instrumentalists, like especially trumpeters and timpanists, when they're not playing for like 3 or 4 minutes. Like whenever I conduct with orchestras, I go through the whole, I go through every part, even the orchestra players, but especially the percussion and the trumpet and the tuba, because they lie low for so long. And I circle their entrance, which means I want to make sure I give them the cue, because they've been waiting so long. They've been doing crossword puzzles in the pit, and then you got to bring them in. Now, in the fourth to the last measure, you have poco allegando in a triplet. It's not hard. 1, 2, dun 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 dun. I wouldn't go dun dun. No, 1, 2, dun 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 dun. Cut everybody off, and then finally, libera. I'd continue doing the pattern here, and then make sure that even though it's marked 4Ps, it says morendo on the last note. So on the end, that's a nothing, but you have to keep doing this. If you're Leonard Bernstein, you just let your hands drop and you don't cut anybody off. That can work, but better to just cut them off. Okay, I skipped around a lot, but I had one soloist in Italy who was a real, I won't say, out of the 4, there was one, the mezzo was really not nice. They test you, they test you, but I didn't make a fuss over it. I just was nice and I got my way and all that. Any questions? Next week is the Brahms Requiem.
I think Celeste might have a question.
No.
Quick question.
No?
Go
Am I okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Am I, can you hear me now, as they say in the commercial? Okay.
Nice
In
bookshelf.
the first movement. Oh,
Nice.
thank you. I had made to order to because of obviously the different size scores. I
Right.
designed every square inch to be used for every size. As you can see, there's no space, no matter what the size is. And I'm not a mathematician, but when it came to my books, yes, I managed to work it out. And even all the pilasters that I had done so they could be incrementally moved if I had to do any kind of a shift. And even how thick everything was with the oak, because if they were too wide, they would bevel down. So behind them, I actually have 2 rods behind. You can't see it because of that. It's so weighty with big scores, as you know, they begin to dip. So I had double pilasters done, so they're actually braced with, underneath doubly so. And the heaviest things, and I used to have vinyl records on it, I made the shelves even shorter because of the longer they are, and the book, the person who made the book came to make the back very thin, thinking I guess I'd be putting tchotchkes on them or something like that. I said, no, I want it even thicker because of the, would really pull it apart if I didn't. So that my whole apartment may fall apart in an earthquake, but not these bookshelves. I'll stand by my bookshelves and they won't come down on me. Thank you for noticing, as one book person to another, analog things. I have the Dover edition, the score. And of course, it's interesting how you mentioned things. So that's what I'm relating to. So the first movement, measure 55 going into measures 56. Why would you need a pause if measure 55 has a whole note, it's taking up the whole measure, and on my edition, 56 says attacca subito. It almost is making you think, don't take a big pause there because, unless I'm getting a mix.
There's attacca subito and there's attacca subito. That's like when I talked to Leon Palmer's, about 45 years ago, one of the great piano teachers and pianists at Queens College. He used to accompany one of the great violinists on tour. I asked him about staccatos. He said to me, there are staccatos and there are staccatos. It depends on look, it depends on the acoustics. I mean, if you're doing this in St. Paul's in London, which has reverberation of like 8.5 seconds, you're not going to want to just jump right in. But that's extreme. Let me just look at this. Attacca subito, I would not do this. I would not go Verdi. Generally speaking, if the acoustics were such that the echo is a half a second or 1 second or 2 seconds, I would just do this. So my cutoff is the prep, but I'm delaying the downbeat. Here's the final whole note, which I wouldn't beat throughout the whole note. That's crazy. I don't think he meant it to be exactly a whole note. So I'd go
Why not put a fermata over it then?
Yeah, well, he doesn't, because why didn't he put a fermata? I mean, I would assume he
seemed to me
doesn't. I'm doing it more like a stretch than a fermata. I mean, I'm holding it for 4 beats, not 8 beats. Fermata means you can hold it, you know, fly, you can hold it for 7 or 8 beats. I'm still hearing the beats in my head, sort of, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4. But the point is, you know, subito, attacca subito doesn't mean it's absolutely, you know, metronomically attacca subito, within reason and the acoustics and the end of a section. He just doesn't want this long pause. That's all. That's my answer to that.
I'm so sorry. I actually don't understand which section you're talking about.
Oh, measure 55 going to 56 in the first movement. Back to the opening. 56 is just like the opening of the piece. While you're looking, Dom, you had a question?
No, I have the same as.
Well, do you have measure markings?
No, no measures. I put 50 because it was in the score of yours, so that was shown today. You have the same score as me.
Oh, okay. So you want to bring that up,
Yeah,
Karina?
has the same score as I have.
She'll have to go back to the first movement.
Yeah, I got
Measure.
it. There are no measure numbers, but I put it because she had it.
Okay, right there on the top. Yeah, she had it. Now it's gone.
What's the measure number again?
55 going to 56. You had it. I saw it. There it is. No. Yeah, right there. Stop.
Okay.
Look at the screen. Just look at the screen. Don't look at your score.
Got it. Yeah, so I found it now. But when there
Before
was
tempo.
Yeah, I got it.
Right before tempo 1. In her score, in my score, along with the words tempo 1, it says attacca. Yeah, that's what she meant.
I don't have it exactly like you have.
You see the spot now that we were talking about? Do you see? Okay. Anyway, I've answered that. Now, Dom, you had a question? And then we probably have to stop.
Unmute yourself, Dom.
During the choral a cappella sections that you had with both of your performances, how are you able to keep the choir in tune before when the orchestra comes back?
I wasn't able to keep them in. Well, that's a good question. They happened to be in tune. But look, there is a real danger. It's a huge danger. But that's a good question. When I'm rehearsing and in performance, sometimes as a flatting, I tell them ahead of time, this means you're flatting, raise the pitch. And even before they're about to flat, because I sense that they are going to flat. And I tell them ahead of time, and that when I do this, and you know you're not flatting, we rehearse certain sections where they flat, and they know to be extra careful. And sometimes I even in rehearsals do an exercise where I'll tell them, like hold an and like and then you know, just raise it very slight. We practice it, but basically they were okay. I mean, if you have a chorus that flats, you're in trouble. If you have one singer, the whole chorus flat, by the way. So that's a real danger. Yeah, tell people to hold their own. You know, anything else? This was exciting.
Thank you.
Revisit the Verdi Requiem.
Thank you so much all for being here. To our new friends too, thanks for joining us.
I want to tell you a quick story. So, well, I have so many stories. Let's tell you one. It was a torrential downpour right before my performance in Carnegie Hall, lasting from about 4 o'clock till 9. Torrential. I think that kept some audience away, but we were still 95% sold out in Carnegie. Because, you know, I had 7 choirs, their friends, relatives, the whole bit, other people. But during the performance, unbeknownst to me until afterwards, apparently the ushers were walking around with cotton in their ears because Zankel Hall beneath Carnegie was just constructed, and they were doing an amplified reggae concert at the same time, and the sound was coming up through the floor into the orchestra. People in the rear orchestra were hearing it. People like towards the stage weren't hearing it. So I complained to the management, my board complained to the management, I think his name Clive or something, I forget. Very nice. He sent me a long letter back, apologizing profusely, saying now we know not to schedule amplified music at the same time. And he sent me a check. I was hoping he'd send me like a check for like $1,000 because it cost me $44,000 to rent the hall.
Ooh.
He sent me a check for $11,000, which was a deposit on the hall.
Beautiful.
So I ended up, beautiful. I ended up, the concert cost me $117,000. I pulled in $109,000 in ticket sales. I lost $8,000 as opposed to $19,000 because he sent me back 11.
Bravo.
Yeah, right. What a world. You know,
It was a real Dies Irae day.
yeah, right. Let's go. Spread the word. Let's get 100 people next week for the Brahms.
Yeah, we're really, you know, as you know, these are completely free. Harold is dedicating his time for this entire season, and we want to get some more people on here just so we can, you know, build the community. So if you know anyone that's interested, we would love for you to just forward the email, or even just, you know, have them email us. But thank you all so much for being here, and we'll hopefully see you next week.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.